Sit down before I have you cuffed." The captain's voice boomed through the aisle as passengers shrank back, watching the man in the grey hoodie absorb the humiliation in silence. A sick student was trembling beside him. A doctor was trying to intervene, and yet Captain Miller doubled down smirking, parading his authority like a weapon. What he didn't know was that the man he was threatening wasn't a powerless economy passenger. He was the owner of the airline, and in less than a minute the uniform Miller worshipped was going to become the very thing stripped away from him in front of the entire cabin. The hum of Chicago O'Hare International Airport was a familiar chaotic symphony to Elijah Davis. It was the sound of beginnings and endings, of hurried goodbyes and joyful reunions. To most it was just noise. To Elijah, it was the sound of his life's work. At 42, Elijah Davies was the founder-majority stockholder and CEO of Summit Air, an airline he had built from 2 lease aircraft and a dream into a major national carrier. And today, he was invisible. He wore no tailored suit, no $10,000 watch. His attire was a plain dark grey hoodie, well-worn jeans, and a pair of simple sneakers. His face, which had graced the cover of Forbes and Fortune, was hidden beneath a generic black baseball cap. He was Eli, a passenger in Group 5, booked in seat 28B on Flight 7 Wofteam to San Francisco, a middle seat in economy. He was flying incognito for a reason. For the past 6 months, the data had been telling a story he didn't like. While Summit Air's profits were strong, its customer complaint index was skyrocketing. Reports of rude staff, dirty cabins, and a pervasive culture of indifference were flooding his executive team. The anonymous feedback from employees was even worse. Speaking of a toxic environment, especially within the Chicago crew base, run by pilots and attendants who felt they were above the rules, his board urged him to hire consultants. His COO, a sharp woman named Amanda Cole, had wanted to fly to Chicago herself and start firing people. But Elijah knew that a wolf in wolf's clothing is spotted a mile away. To see the real airline, the airline his customers saw, he had to become a customer. A customer with no power, no status, a customer in economy. He sat near gate C22 watching. The terminal was bright, but the Summit Airgate area felt tired. The carpet was stained, and the digital displays flickered intermittently. The 2 gate agents, a man named Paul and a woman named Brenda, were putting on a masterclass in disinterest. A young couple, clearly anxious, approached the desk. "Excuse me," the woman said. "We're flying with our infant. Can we just confirm our seats are together?" Brenda, without looking up from her phone, snapped. "Seating is assigned at booking. If you didn't pay for seat selection, you get what you get. Next." "But the app," said the husband started. Sir Paul interrupted, his voice dripping with condescension. "The app says a lot of things. We're busy. We'll call for pre-boarding now. Please step aside." Elijah watched the couple walk away, dejected and stressed. He made a mental note. Gate agents say 222 hostile, non-solution oriented. He wasn't just observing. He was auditing. In his pocket, a small digital recorder was silently capturing the ambient sound, and his phone's notepad was filling up. He was building a case. He just didn't know that the worst of it was yet to come. An announcement garbled and loud crackled over the PA. "Attention passengers for Flight 715. We are Crackle, delayed, awaiting crew." They are static inbound. A collective groan went through the waiting area. Elijah checked his watch. The crew was late on a clear, sunny Tuesday. That was a bad sign. It meant indiscipline. 10 minutes later, the crew for Flight 715 arrived. They didn't just walk. They swaggered. They moved through the crowd of passengers like royalty, parting a sea of peasants, their roll-aboard bags clacking loudly on the tile. Leading them was the captain. Elijah clocked him instantly. He was tall, silver-haired, with a chiseled jaw and a smug set to his mouth. His uniform was impeccable, but his eyes were bored and arrogant. He was laughing loudly at something his co-pilot, a younger, nervous-looking man, had said. This was Captain Mark Miller. Elijah knew his name. Miller was one of the airline's most senior pilots, but his file was thick with minor complaints that his union reps always managed to swat away. Following him were the flight attendants. Two women, one older, with blonde hair, shelliced into a permanent helmet, and a face full of severe makeup, was clearly the senior. This was Karen Vance. She was fawning over Captain Miller, laughing at his jokes a little too loudly. The other was a young woman, perhaps in her early 20s, with a kind, nervous face. Her name tag read Sarah Jenkins. She looked stressed, constantly checking her tablet, her smile strained. Captain Miller didn't stop at the gate desk. He and Karen Vance breezed right past the agents and through the jetway door, disappearing onto the plane, leaving the gate agents and the first officer to handle the logistics. Sarah, the junior attendant, paused. She saw the young couple with the infant. Elijah watched as she knelt. "Hi there," she said, her voice soft. "I'm Sarah. I'm on your flight today. Are you guys okay?" The mother, near tears, explained their seating problem. Sarah's face filled with empathy. "Okay," she said. "I can't promise anything, but let me get on board and see our passenger manifest. I will do my absolute best to find a solution for you. What are your names?" Elijah felt a small spark of hope. Sarah Jenkins, proactive, empathetic. He wrote her name down for a different reason. The couple visibly relaxed. Sarah gave them a warm smile and hurried onto the jetway. 20 minutes later, boarding began. Paul and Brenda were as brusque as ever. Group 1 only. If you're not Group 1, step away from the blue line." Elijah waited. Groups 2, 3, and 4 were called. Finally. "All right, all remaining groups. Group 5, whatever. Just get on." Elijah joined the shuffle. His baseball cap pulled low. He was just another face in the crowd, another piece of self-loading cargo, as he'd heard one disgruntled pilot call passengers. He stepped onto the jet bridge, the anticipation in his stomach, feeling less like a CEO checking his company and more like a man walking into a trap. He was about to find out just how deep the rot in his company had spread. The atmosphere inside the Airbus A321 was stale. As Elijah stepped on board, he was greeted not with a smile, but with a wall of indifference. Karen Vance, the senior flight attendant, stood at the galley, her back to the boarding passengers. She was deep in conversation with Captain Miller, who had emerged from the cockpit and was leaning against the bulkhead, his arms crossed, a smirk on his face. They were gossiping. So I told him, "If you want to make it to Denver, I suggest you sit down." You should have seen his face. Karen cackled a harsh grating sound. "That's nothing." Miller replied, his voice a low, confident boom. "This guy last week, some tech bro from Frisco, tried to tell me about a flight path vector. I asked him if his app was FAA certified. Shut him up real quick." They were loud enough for the first few rows of first class to hear. They didn't care. Elijah, walking past them toward the economy cabin, made eye contact with Miller for just a fraction of a second. Miller's eyes swept over Elijah's hoodie and jeans with undisguised contempt, before dismissing him completely. He didn't even see Elijah as a person. He saw him as a seat filler. Elijah continued down the narrow aisle. He found Sarah Jenkins, the junior attendant in the MIDC cabin galley, frantically trying to reorganize catering bins. She looked up as Elijah passed, offering a tense but genuine smile. "Welcome aboard, sir. Your seat is just a few rows down on the right." "Thank you, Sarah," Elijah replied, using her name. She blinked, surprised he'd noticed, but the tide of passengers behind him forced him to keep moving. He found his row 28. A woman with sharp, intelligent features and silver-streaked dark hair was already in the window seat 28A. She was typing furiously on a laptop, her brow furrowed. The aisle seat 28C was occupied by a young man, probably college-aged, who was nervously tapping his fingers on his knees. Elijah was 28B, the dreaded middle. "Excuse me?" Elijah said politely. The young man, his name tag on his backpack read, Tim, jumped fumbling with his headphones. "Oh, sorry." He stood up hastily, letting Elijah squeeze in. "Thanks," Elijah said, settling in. The seat felt grimy. He subtly ran a finger along the armrest, and it came back with a fine layer of dust. He glanced at the seat back pocket. It was stuffed with a crumpled napkin, and a used wrapper. Cleanliness standards failed. He settled in for the long boarding process. From his vantage point, he had a clear view of the cabin dynamics. Karen Vance patrolled the economy aisles with the enthusiasm of a prison guard. "Sir, that bag has to go under the seat." "No, all the way under. I don't want to see it." "Mom, you can't be in the exit row. You need to move now." "No, you can't have water. We haven't even closed the door." "Sit down." Her voice was a buzzsaw, cutting through the cabin. Then Elijah watched her interact with Sarah. Sarah was trying to help an elderly woman put her bag in the overhead bin. The bag was heavy, and Sarah was struggling. "Karen," Sarah called, straining. "Could I get a hand with this?" Karen, who was standing 3 FT away, sorting her lipstick in her purse, sighed theatrically. "Sarah, we are flight attendants. We are not baggage handlers. If the passenger can't lift it, it needs to be checked. That is the rule. Tell her to check it." "But the doors are about to close," Sarah pleaded. "Then it's her problem, not ours." Karen snapped loud enough for the surrounding rows to hear. The elderly woman looked mortified. Elijah felt a hot spike of anger. He unbuckled, stood up, and addressed the woman. "Here, Mom, let me help you." He easily lifted the bag and placed it in the bin. "Oh, thank you, young man," the woman said, relieved. Elijah just nodded and sat back down. He caught Sarah's eye. She looked grateful, but also terrified. From the front of the cabin, he saw Karen Vance glaring at him. He had just become a target. The woman in the window seat next to him, who had stopped typing to watch the exchange, leaned over. "Well, that was appalling," she whispered, her voice crisp and educated. "Her name is Karen." "How fitting. I'm Isabella Reed, by the way." "Dr. Reed," she offered a hand. Elijah shook it. "Eli, just Eli, and yes, appalling." "I fly this route twice a month," Dr. Reed muttered, returning to her laptop. "This crew is new, and they are by far the worst I've ever seen. Summit has gone downhill." Elijah's stomach tightened. Summit has gone downhill. The words from a high-value frequent flyer were a knife to the gut. Finally, the cabin door was closed. Captain Miller's voice crackled over the PA system. It was not the professional, reassuring tone Elijah insisted on in training. It was bored, arrogant, and laced with impatience. "Folks, listen up. This is your captain, Mark Miller. Flight attendants, prepare for takeoff. We're already late thanks to the ground crew, so let's try to make this quick. Weather's clear, which is good. Means I might actually get home in time for the game tonight. For those of you who haven't flown before the seatbelt sign is on, that means you stay in your seat. We'll be in the air as soon as I can get this thing moving. Cabin crew, secure the cabin and try to keep the aisle clear." The try was loaded with sarcasm. Dr. Reed scoffed. "My God, he sounds like a disgruntled bus driver." Elijah just stared ahead, his notepad app open on his phone, his thumb typing furiously under the cover of his tray table. Miller, unprofessional PA, blamed ground crew disparaged passengers. Vance, insubordinate, hostile to passengers, refused assistance. Jenkins attempted de-escalation overruled. Cabin dirty morale critical. The plane began its taxi, the engines whining. Elijah Davies, CEO, felt like a failure. But Eli, the passenger, felt something else. He felt anger, and he was beginning to suspect that this late departure was just the start of a very, very long flight. The ascent was smooth, and Flight 715 punched through the thin Chicago clouds into a brilliant, sun-drenched sky. Below them, the city shrank to a map. Inside the cabin, however, the atmosphere was growing darker. Once they reached cruising altitude, the service began. Karen Vance and Sarah Jenkins emerged with the drink carts. Karen worked the front of the economy cabin. Sarah worked the back. They would meet in the middle where Elijah was sitting. Karen's approach was a masterwork of passive aggression. She slammed the brakes on the cart at every row, her voice flat and bored. Drinks, a passenger in row 25 asked for a full can of soda. "We only give out cups," Karen stated. "Policy, but I always get the full can on Summit," the passenger replied, confused. "Well, today you don't." Diet or regular Elijah knew for a fact this wasn't the policy. The policy was Make the customer happy. When the cart reached his row, Dr. Reed asked for a club soda with lime. Karen poured the soda and unceremoniously dropped a single dry lime wedge into it from her fingers. "And for you?" she asked, looking at Elijah. "Just a coffee black, please," Elijah said. Karen's lip curled. She grabbed a cup and sloshed some coffee into it, spilling some over the rim. She thrust it at him. "Here." Elijah took the hot, dripping cup. "Could I get a napkin for that?" Karen rolled her eyes, an audible sigh escaping her. She ripped a cocktail napkin from the stack and threw it on his tray table before slamming the cart's brake and moving to the next row, her back to him. Dr. Reed was staring aghast. "She is unbelievable." "Are you all right?" "I'm fine," Elijah said, wiping up the spill. But he wasn't. He was furious. This was his airline, his name, and this woman was treating his customers and him like trash. In contrast, when Sarah's cart reached them from the back, the experience was night and day. "Hi, folks," she said, her voice strained but still warm. "Can I get you anything to drink?" She made eye contact. She smiled. When a passenger asked for a full can, she said, "Absolutely, no problem at all." When she reached row 28, she saw Elijah's half-empty spilled cup. "Oh goodness, sir, did you want a refill? Let me get you a fresh cup and a real napkin." She was efficient, apologetic, and professional. "Thank you, Sarah. That's very kind," Elijah said as she handed him the new cup. Karen barked from a few rows ahead. Sarah stopped fraternizing. "We're on a schedule." Sarah's face flushed bright red. "Yes, Karen. Sorry." She hurried to catch up. Her shoulders slumped. Elijah watched her go, his anger for Karen mixing with a deep sympathy for Sarah. The junior attendant was trapped trying to swim against a toxic tide. An hour into the flight, they hit a patch of turbulence. It wasn't severe, but it was sudden. The plane bucked and a few passengers yelped. The fastened seatbelt sign chimed on. Captain Miller's voice came over the PA, not with reassurance, but with annoyance. "Folks told you to keep those belts on. We're hitting a little chop. It's not a big deal, so don't start screaming. Flight attendants, stay seated." The young man next to Elijah Tim did not take this well. He had been quiet the whole flight, his headphones on, but now Elijah saw his knuckles were white as he gripped the armrests. His breathing was becoming fast and shallow. "Hey man," Elijah said softly. "You okay?" Tim didn't respond. He was staring straight ahead, his chest starting to heave. He was having a panic attack. Elijah said a little louder. "My name is Eli. You're okay. It's just turbulence. We're safe. I can't." Tim gasped, his eyes wide with terror. "I can't breathe. I need air. I need to get up." He fumbled with his seatbelt, trying to stand. "Whoa, Tim, stay seated," Elijah said, putting a gentle hand on his arm. "The seatbelt sign is on. Just try to breathe. Look at me. In for 4, out for 4. But Tim was too far gone. "No, I need the bathroom. I'm going to be sick." He unbuckled and scrambled over Elijah's legs, knocking a new cup of coffee all over Elijah's jeans, and bolted for the aisle. Elijah called. The college student stumbled, lurching with the turbulence, and made his way toward the front of the economy cabin, toward the lavatory. This was where Karen Vance was seated in her jump seat, looking utterly bored. She saw Tim approaching and held up a flat palm. "Whoa, buddy. Where do you think you're going?" she snapped. Bathroom. Sick." Tim gasped, clutching his stomach. "The seatbelt sign is on. Go back to your seat now." "But I'm going to be sick, please," Tim pleaded. He was pale and sweating profusely. "I don't care," Karen said, her voice cold. "It's FAA regulations. I'm not letting you into the lavatory while we're in turbulence." "Go back to your seat, ma'am. He's not faking, doctor," Reed said, having unbuckled and followed them into the aisle. Elijah was right behind her. "I'm a physician. This young man is having a severe panic attack. He's hyperventilating. Look at him." Karen Vance turned her steely gaze on Dr. Reed. "And I'm the flight attendant, and I say he's a security risk. Now both of you sit down, or I'll call the captain. He's not a risk. He's a patient." Dr. Reed argued, her voice rising. He needs a quiet space. The lavatory is the only option right now. No, Karen said, crossing her arms. Economy passengers use the economy lavatories, and this one is closed. Period. This is ridiculous. Elijah said, his voice low and dangerous. The man is ill. Your job is to provide for his safety and care. He needs to use the lavatory. Let him pass. Karen looked at Elijah like he was a piece of gum on her shoe. You again? Look, buddy, I've had it with you. You're interfering with a flight crew. That's a federal offense. I'm calling the captain. This is on you. She unclipped her intercom. Captain Miller, I have a disturbance in the main cabin. Row 28. 2 passengers plus a sick one are becoming aggressive. I need you. Dr. Reed's jaw dropped. Aggressive? We're trying to help. Oh, this is going to be good. Karen sneered, a small triumphant smile on her face. You're all in for it now. Elijah looked at Tim, who was now slumped against the bulkhead, crying quietly. He looked at Dr. Reed, who was vibrating with righteous fury. And he looked at Karen Vance, who was reeing in her power. The turbulence was a perfect metaphor for what was happening. The smooth flight of Summit Air had hit a pocket of toxicity so severe it was about to tear the cabin apart, and the captain, the man who was supposed to fly them to safety, was being called not to solve a problem and to escalate one. The click of the cockpit door unlocking was audible even over the engine hum. A moment later, the door swung open and Captain Mark Miller emerged. He wasn't walking. He was stalking. His pilot's hat was pulled low, and his face was a mask of pure, unfiltered rage. He had clearly been interrupted, and he was not happy. What? He barked, his eyes scanning the galley. What is so important you have to pull me from the flight deck during turbulence? Karen Vance's demeanor changed instantly. She became the victim. Oh, Captain, thank God. These passengers, she gestured to Elijah and Dr. Reed, are being incredibly disruptive. This one, pointing at Tim, refused to stay in his seat, and these 2 got up and started threatening me when I told him to sit down. They're interfering with my duties. Threatening Dr. Reed exploded. We did no such thing. We were trying to explain that this man is having a medical emergency. Miller's gaze fell on Dr. Reed. His eyes roamed over her expensive-looking pantsuit, and his expression softened just a fraction. Mom, I'm sure you think you're helping, but my attendant is FAA certified. If she says, sit, you sit. That's the rule. It's a stupid rule when someone is sick. Dr. Reed shot back. I'm a doctor. He's having a panic attack. He needs care, not a lecture. Miller's patience snapped. He was used to being obeyed, not questioned. A doctor, huh? Well, I'm the captain, and on this plane, my word is law, not yours. Now go back to your seat, Doc, before I have you written up too. He then turned his full, undivided attention to Elijah. His eyes ran over the dark hoodie, now stained with coffee. He saw the baseball cap. He saw a black man from economy who had the audacity to be standing in the aisle questioning his crew. And he smirked. It was a slow, oily, utterly contemptuous smirk. And you, Miller said, jabbing a finger at Elijah, I remember you from boarding. You were with that old woman and her bag. He let out a short, ugly laugh. Always trying to be the hero, aren't you? Elijah stood still. He said nothing. His silence, his calmness, seemed to infuriate Miller even more. What's your problem, buddy? Miller goaded him. You got a problem with my crew? You got a problem with my rules? Captain Elijah said, his voice quiet, but carrying an unnerving weight. This man is sick. The woman next to me is a doctor, and she's confirmed it. Your attendant, Miss Vance, is not only refusing to help, she is actively escalating the situation. All he needed was the lavatory. Miller's face went from angry to amused. He looked around as if to play to a crowd that wasn't there. He leaned in, lowering his voice to a conspiratorial, mocking tone. Oh, I see. We've got an expert here. Miller said, his voice dripping with sarcasm. He looked at Karen. An expert on aviation, on medicine, on everything. He turned back to Elijah. Listen, and listen close. I've been flying planes since before you were well wherever you came from. I am in charge of this multi-million-dollar aircraft and the 200 souls on board, and you know what? I'm not in charge of your feelings or his." He jerked a thumb at Tim. "Now for the last time, people like you," Miller said. And the way he said "you" was heavy loaded with implication. People who fly in the back, you get what you pay for. You follow the rules. You sit down. You shut up. And you stay out of the way of the professionals. He was inches from Elijah's face. The smell of stale coffee was on his breath. "Do you understand me?" Miller whispered. "Or do I need to get the zip cuffs and have you restrained until we land in San Francisco? I'd be happy to. It would be the highlight of my flight." This was the moment, the mocking. It wasn't just a pilot being rude. It was a complete and total abuse of power wrapped in a sneering racist and classist bow. He was mocking Elijah for being in economy. He was mocking him for his clothes. He was mocking him for his race. Elijah didn't flinch. He didn't raise his voice. He just held the captain's gaze. Dr. Reed, watching this, was horrified. "Captain, that is completely uncalled for. You are out of line." "Shut up!" Miller roared, spinning on her. "I've had it with all of you. Karen, get on the intercom. Tell the first officer I'm detaining 3 passengers. We'll have a welcoming committee for them in SFO." Karen Vance's face lit up with a look of pure, malicious glee. "With pleasure, Captain." She reached for the phone. No, Elijah said it was one word, but it cut through the cabin. It wasn't quiet. Miller laughed again. "No, no. Did you hear that, Karen?" He said, "No. What are you going to do? A buddy write me a bad Yelp review?" He turned to Karen, his back to Elijah, in a gesture of ultimate dismissal. "Make the call, Karen." Elijah's voice said now, devoid of all warmth. "If you touch that phone, you will be charged with insubordination." Karen froze. Miller spun back around, his face purple. "That's it. You're done. You just threatened my flight attendant." "No, Captain," Elijah said, reaching into his back pocket. "I just gave her a warning, and now I'm giving you one." "A warning from you?" Miller scoffed. "You're nobody." "That's where you're wrong," Elijah said. He pulled out his phone. It wasn't his wallet or a credit card. It was his phone. Miller looked confused. "What, are you going to record me?" "Go ahead. It's my word against yours, and I'm wearing the uniform." Elijah's fingers moved swiftly over the screen. He wasn't recording. He was pulling up an app, the internal Summit Air Employee Directory. He tapped his own profile. Captain Elijah said, his voice now ringing with an authority that stunned the galley into silence. "You are correct. You are the captain of this aircraft. You are responsible for every soul on board." He held up the phone. On the screen was a picture of him not in a hoodie, but in a crisp suit next to the words, "Elijah Davies, founder and chief executive officer, Summit Air." "But I," Elijah said, locking eyes with the pilot, "am responsible for you." The silence that fell in the galley was absolute. It was heavier and more terrifying than any turbulence. The only sound was the faint electronic chime of the seatbelt sign finally belatedly being turned off by the first officer in the cockpit. Captain Mark Miller stared at the phone. The name, Elijah Davies. The title, founder and CEO. The face, the man in the suit was the man in the hoodie. It didn't compute. His brain, so full of arrogance and procedure, simply stalled. He looked from the phone to Elijah's face, then back to the phone. His smug, ruddy complexion dissolved, turning a pale, sickly ashen grey. The blood drained from his face so fast, he looked like he might faint. Seconds later, the realization hit him. Not as a gentle dawning, but as a physical, violent impact. It was like a brick wall at 500 meters per hour. The man he had just mocked, the man he had just called Buddy, the man he had sneered at for being an economy, the man he had threatened with zip cuffs and arrest, was the man who owned the entire airline. Karen Vance, frozen with her hand outstretched toward the intercom, let out a small, strangled gasp. Her eyes, wide with horror, darted from the phone to Elijah. Her entire body began to tremble. Dr. Reed, who had been bracing for a fight, simply blinked. Her jaw dropped. "Well," she breathed. I did not see that coming. Tim, the sick passenger, had no idea what was happening, but he could feel the power in the air shift, as if the poles of the earth had suddenly reversed. Elijah Davies remained perfectly still. He let the silence stretch, letting the full weight of the moment crush the two employees in front of him. He let them marinate in the consequences of their actions. Miller was the first to break. His voice, which had been a confident boom, was now a pathetic squeak. Mr. Davis, He couldn't form a sentence. He was sputtering. I didn't know. It's a misunderstanding. A misunderstanding. Elijah's voice was now ice. A misunderstanding, Captain. Let's review what I misunderstood. He took a step forward. Miller, the picture of authority just moments ago, physically recoiled, pressing himself back against the galley wall. I misunderstood your unprofessional pre-flight announcement, where you blamed our own ground crew for your lateness. It was a joke, Miller stammered. I misunderstood the state of this cabin. Elijah continued, his voice rising. The filth on the seats, the trash in the pockets. I misunderstood your senior attendant, Miss Vance, refusing to help an elderly passenger with her bag. A clear violation of our service policy. Karen Vance made a small sound and seemed to shrink into herself. I misunderstood Ms. Vance being rude, dismissive, and hostile to every passenger she interacted with, including myself. Elijah said, gesturing to the coffee stain on his jeans. And I misunderstood her berating Ms. Jenkins, the only member of your crew who has shown an ounce of professionalism or basic human decency on this entire flight. Sarah, who had been watching from the back galley, pale and wide-eyed, now looked like she might cry. Elijah turned his full attention back to Miller, who was visibly shaking. And then, Captain Miller, I misunderstood you, Elijah said, his voice dropping to a dangerous growl. You came out of that cockpit not to de-escalate, but to assault. You threatened a paying customer. You ignored a medical opinion from a doctor. You belittled a sick passenger. Elijah took one more step, so he was eye to eye with the pilot. And then you looked at me. You looked at a black man in a hoodie. And you called him Buddy. You told him, people like you need to sit down and shut up. You threatened me. You threatened the owner of this company with arrest. He paused, letting the indictment hang in the air. So, Captain, Elijah finished. Tell me, what exactly did I misunderstand? Miller had no answer. He was broken. The uniform that had given him so much power now looked like a cheap costume. He was just a man, a bully, who had been caught. Mr. Davies, Sir Karen Vance, suddenly cried, dropping all pretense. Her voice was high and whining. Please, I was just following his lead. He's the captain. I was following procedure. I didn't mean anything by it. I have a mortgage. I have silence, Elijah commanded. The single word cut her off like a switch. You, Miss Vance, are a disgrace to the uniform. Your procedure is an excuse for cruelty. You have no business working in a service industry, let alone on my airline. He turned back to Miller. The time for talking was over. The time for consequences had begun. Captain Mark Miller Elijah stated, his voice now formal. Official, you are in direct violation of Summit Air Code of Conduct, Articles 4, 7 and 12. Professionalism, passenger care, and anti-discrimination. You are also in violation of FAA guidelines regarding crew conduct and management of a passenger medical event. You are a liability to this airline, and you are a danger to these passengers. He pointed to the cockpit. You will return to the flight deck. You will not touch the controls. You will not speak on the radio. You will inform your first officer, Mr. Chen, that he is now the pilot in command and he will be handling the landing. You will be a silent passenger in your own jump seat. Is that clear, Miller? A broken man could only nod. Yes. Yes, sir. Go. Without another word, Captain Mark Miller, the arrogant king of the skies, turned, opened the cockpit door, and disappeared inside a defeated, humiliated ghost. Elijah then turned to the quivering wreck that was Karen Vance. Ms. Vance, you are suspended effective immediately. You will go to the rear jump seat. You will sit there until we land. You will not speak to Ms. Jenkins. You will not speak to any passenger. You will not assist in any way. Your career as a flight attendant for Summit Air is over. Please, she whispered, tears of self-pity streaming down her overaid. Go, Elijah ordered. Like a deflated balloon, Karen Vance shuffled past him, her head down, and began the long, shameful walk to the back of the plane. The walk of shame would be whispered about by Summit crews for years to come. The galley was finally mercifully clear. The atmosphere in the cabin had changed. The 50-odd passengers in the surrounding rows, who had been a captive audience to the entire drama, were in a state of stunned silence. A few were filming on their phones. Though Elijah suspected the audio from this distance would be minimal, it didn't matter. The point had been made. Elijah turned to the remaining 3 people in the galley, Dr. Isabella Reed, the terrified passenger, Tim, and the junior flight attendant, Sarah Jenkins, who looked like she had just witnessed a lightning strike. Elijah's demeanor shifted instantly. The ice-cold CEO vanished and the compassionate leader returned. He turned to Tim first. Tim, are you okay? I am so sorry for how you were treated. Tim, who had managed to catch his breath, just nodded. I think so. What just happened? What just happened, said Dr. Reed, a slow, impressed smile spreading across her face, is that we just saw the boss clean his own house, Mr. Davies. That was spectacular. Dr. Isabella Reed, she said, offering her hand again properly this time. I'm a cardiologist, and I can tell you what you just did for my blood pressure was miraculous. Elijah shook her hand warmly. Dr. Reed, thank you. Thank you for speaking up. Thank you for trying to help. It's what I expect from my crew, and I'm devastated they failed you. You, on the other hand, were a model citizen. Happy to help, she said. Now, let's get Tim taken care of. Elijah nodded and turned to Sarah, who was still standing by the back galley trembling. Ms. Jenkins, Sarah, come here, please. Sarah walked forward, her steps hesitant, as if approaching a royal. Yes, Mr. Davis. Sarah, first of all, thank you. I watched you at the gate. I watched you with the elderly passenger. I've been watching you this whole flight. You were the only one doing your job, the only one who treated our passengers with dignity. Sarah flushed. I was just doing what's right, sir. And you were punished for it, Elijah said. That ends today. As of this moment, you are the lead flight attendant for Flight 715. Ms. Vance is indisposed. The cabin is yours. Sarah's eyes went wide. Me? But I'm junior. I'm not. You are. Elijah said, his voice firm but kind. You're the one I trust. Now I need you to do a few things. First, please get Tim a bottle of water, maybe a ginger ale, and find him a new seat. An aisle seat anywhere. If you need to, you have my full authorization to move him to one of the empty seats in first class. Sarah's training kicked in. A new, quiet confidence settled on her. Yes, sir. We have an open seat 3D. I can take him there. Perfect, Elijah said. Second, please, assist Dr. Reed with anything she needs to monitor him. And third, please make an announcement, a simple one, just that we've had a crew matter, and that you'll be taking care of the cabin. Reassure them. Yes, sir, Sarah said. She took a deep breath, and a new professional calm settled over her. She turned to Tim. Tim Wright, come with me. We're going to get you sorted. She led him and Dr. Reed toward the front of the plane. Elijah was alone in the galley for a moment. He leaned against the bulkhead, the adrenaline beginning to fade, replaced by a deep, weary anger. This was so much worse than he thought. This wasn't just a few bad apples. This was a systemic rot, a culture of bullying where a monster like Miller and a sycophant like Vance could thrive while a good, decent employee like Sarah was crushed. He took out his phone. He had no cell service, but the plane's Wi-Fi was active. He connected. He opened his email and began to type. To Amanda, colasamatair.com. Subject, urgent ground flight 715, crew SFO. Amanda, I'm on 715. It's bad. Worse than we thought. I want Captain Mark Miller and Senior FA Karen Vance met at the gate in SFO by security, not airport police, our own internal security and an HR rep. Their credentials are to be revoked on the spot. They are to be escorted from the premises, grounded effective immediately pending termination. First Officer David Chen is to be escorted to a private room for an immediate interview. I need to know what he knew and when he knew it. He landed the plane, but he was silent. The Chicago crew base is toxic. I want a full top-down audit starting yesterday. Pull the files on Miller and Vance. I want every complaint, every incident, every minor write-up. I'll bet my stock options they form a pattern. I'll be at the gate. Elijah, he hit send. The email sent from 35,000 FT was a digital torpedo. The hard karma, as he liked to call it, was already in motion. The consequences weren't seconds later. They were already happening. The rest of the flight was silent but electric. Sarah Jenkins ran the cabin with a quiet, efficient grace. She was a natural leader, and without Karen Vance poisoning the air, she blossomed. She and the other junior attendant, who had been hiding in the back galley, moved through the cabin offering water, checking on passengers, and apologizing for the interruption. Elijah returned to his seat. 28B, Dr. Reed returned a few minutes later, Tim having been settled in first class. "He'll be fine," Dr. Reed reported, sitting down. "He's watching a movie and drinking a ginger ale." A little kindness went a long way. She looked at Elijah. "So the CEO flies economy." Elijah sighed, running a hand over his face. "Sometimes he has to. I wouldn't have seen any of this from 1A. I'm sorry you had to see it too. That's not who we are. Or it's not who we're supposed to be, Mr. Davies. Dr. Reed said I've been a frequent flyer for 20 years. I've seen it all. What I saw today from that pilot was one of the ugliest abuses of power I've ever witnessed. And what I saw from you," she smiled, "was one of the most satisfying acts of karmic justice I've ever seen. You have a lot of work to do, but you've got a customer for life in me." Elijah looked at her, and for the first time that day, he felt a genuine small smile. "Thank you, Doctor. That means more than you know." As the plane began its final descent into San Francisco, Elijah looked out the window past Dr. Reed at the golden red arches of the Golden Gate Bridge. His airline was sick, but he knew how to fix it. The poison had been identified. The antidote was on its way, and it was starting at the gate. The landing at SFO was one of the smoothest Elijah had ever experienced. First Officer David Chen, now in command, set the A321 down on the runway like a feather. It was a textbook landing a silent professional "I am not him" statement to the man sitting in the jump seat behind him. As the plane taxied toward the gate, Elijah unbuckled his seatbelt. The fastened seatbelt sign was still on, but he didn't care. He walked to the front, standing at the bulkhead waiting. Sarah Jenkins was at the main door preparing to disarm it. She looked at him nervously. "Mr. Davis, shouldn't you?" "I'm exactly where I need to be, Sarah. You did an excellent job." The ding of the plane docking was followed by the thunk of the jet bridge connecting. The passengers were all standing, but no one was moving. Everyone was watching the front of the plane. They knew something else was coming. The jet bridge operator knocked. Sarah looked at Elijah. He nodded. She opened the door. Standing in the jet bridge were not the usual smiling gate agents. There stood Amanda Cole, Elijah's COO. She was a tall, imposing woman in a sharp navy blue suit, her face set like granite. Beside her were two large, unsmiling men in Summit Air security jackets and a thin, severe-looking man holding a leather satchel, the HR representative Robert Fields. Amanda Cole's eyes found Elijah's. "Mr. Davies, a word." In a moment, Amanda Elijah said. He turned to the cabin. "Ladies and gentlemen," he said, his voice projecting through the aircraft, "this is Elijah Davies, the CEO of Summit Air. On behalf of the company, I want to offer my deepest, most sincere apologies for the conduct you witnessed from our crew today." He paused specifically from Captain Miller and Ms. Vance. "What you saw was unprofessional. It was unacceptable, and it is not what Summit Air stands for. I want to thank Dr. Reed for her assistance, and I apologize to Mr. Tim, our passenger, who was treated so poorly. For the rest of you, I promise you, we will do better. Your flight today will be refunded in full. Thank you for your patience." A smattering of applause broke out. Elijah nodded. "Thank you. Please depain." He stepped aside. Amanda Cole stepped into the doorway. "Mr. Davies." "Amanda, meet the new lead," Elijah said, gesturing to Sarah. "Miss Sarah Jenkins. She's the real deal." Amanda, a no-nonsense executive, gave Sarah a quick, appraising look. "Ms. Jenkins, good work. Report to my office tomorrow at Air 900. We'll discuss your future." "Yes. Yes, Mom," Sarah said, stunned. The passengers began to file out, many nodding at Elijah, whispering, "Thank you and good job." Dr. Reed stopped. "Mr. Davies, it was a pleasure." "The pleasure was all mine, Doctor. My office will be in touch. We'd like to thank you properly." "Not necessary," she smiled. "But I won't say no." She handed him her card and was gone. Now the cabin was emptying. Elijah and Amanda waited. And then the crew emerged. First Officer David Chen came out, his hat in his hands, his face pale. "Mr. Davies?" "Sir, Mr. Chen." Amanda cut him off. "Mr. Fields and this security officer will escort you to a debriefing room. You are not in trouble yet. Your full and complete cooperation is expected. We need to know everything." Jen nodded, relieved and terrified, and was led away. Then came Karen Vance. She had been crying. Her makeup was a grotesque mess, black streaks running down her powdered white cheeks. She saw the security team, and a new wave of wailing sobs began. "Please, please, I need this job." Miss Vance Robert Fields, the HR rep, said, his voice devoid of all emotion. "You are hereby suspended pending a full investigation. You will surrender your company ID and all Summit Air property. You will be escorted from the airport. A formal letter will be sent to your home." "No, no," she shrieked. The security guards moved in, one on each arm. "Mom, please come with us." They were gentle but firm and began to half-guide, half-carry her up the jet bridge. And then last came the captain. Mark Miller stepped out of his cockpit. His hat was on, but it was crooked. His arrogance was gone, replaced by a sullen, childish anger. He saw Elijah, Amanda, and the remaining security guard, and he sneered. "So this is it, huh? A kangaroo court? You're just going to fire me after 25 years, Mr. Miller," Amanda said. "Hand me your ID." Miller looked at her. "I'm not giving you anything. I'm calling my union rep." "You can call whoever you'd like," Mark Elijah said, stepping forward, "but you'll do it as a private citizen. You are no longer an employee of this airline." "You can't just fire me," Miller shouted. "I have a contract." The union, Elijah, interrupted his voice, cutting like a razor. "Cannot protect you from this. We have multiple passenger witnesses. We have a physician's testimony. We have my testimony. We have your entire Chicago crew base ready to talk now that they know you're not there to protect them. You didn't just break a rule, Mark. You destroyed the faith of every passenger on this plane. You put your ego ahead of safety. You are done. You, Miller was trembling with rage. He looked like he might swing. The security guard stepped forward. "Captain, please don't make this worse." Miller looked at the guard. He looked at Amanda. He looked at Elijah. He knew he was beaten. The fight was over. Slowly, his hand went to his breast pocket. He pulled out his company ID, his key to the world, as he used to call it. He didn't hand it to Amanda. He threw it on the floor of the jet bridge. "This company is a joke," he spat. "It was," Elijah said, "bending down to pick up the ID when you were in charge. Now it's a company in recovery." He handed the ID to Amanda. "Get him out of here." Amanda nodded to the security guard. "Escort Mr. Miller off the property. He is not to enter any Summit Air facility ever again." "My pleasure," the guard said, putting a hand on Miller's elbow. "Get your hands off me," Miller roared. But there was no power in it. He was just a loud, angry man. He was led away shouting about his rights, his voice echoing down the jet bridge until it was finally gone. Elijah and Amanda were left alone in the quiet. "Well," Amanda said, letting out a long breath. "That was more dramatic than I expected. Are you all right? Your jeans are stained." Elijah looked down at the coffee. "It'll wash out, but the stain he left on the company, that's going to take more work." "I've already started the audit," Amanda said, tapping her tablet. Pulled the files. Miller has 14 customer service complaints in the last 3 years. All dismissed. Vance has 22. They were a protected team. The Chicago bullies, the other crews called them. They terrorized the junior staff. "Not anymore," Elijah said. "I want Sarah Jenkins in on that 900 meeting. She's not just getting a promotion. I want her to help us rewrite the service training manual. We're naming the new initiative after this flight. The Flight 715 Initiative." Amanda asked, a small smile playing on her lips. "Exactly," Elijah said. "Let's go. We have a lot of work to do." They walked off the jet bridge and into the terminal. Elijah Davies was no longer invisible. He was the boss, and he was back in charge. The hard karma for Captain Mark Miller and Karen Vance was not a single event, but a complete dismantling of their careers. Fired for cause their actions were so egregious that their unions offered little more than a token protest. Both were blacklisted from the airline industry. Miller, his arrogance shattered, lost his job, his prestige, and his marriage, eventually ending up as a part-time instructor at a small flight school. Vance, after a failed lawsuit against Summit, where she had to pay the company's legal fees, ended up in a call center monitored daily for customer service quality. Conversely, the positive outcomes were just as powerful. Sarah Jenkins, as promised, was promoted to a training supervisor. She became the face of the new Flight 715 initiative, a company-wide program she helped design to ensure dignity and de-escalation were at the heart of their service. Dr. Isabella Reed was granted CEO status for life, guaranteeing free first-class travel, and Summit Air made a massive donation to her favorite medical charity. Tim, the young passenger, received a full apology, 100,000 travel miles, and company-sponsored therapy for his flight anxiety. Elijah Davies's incognito trip became a company legend. He had faced the toxicity in his airline, not from a boardroom, but from a middle seat in economy. The Chicago base was cleaned out, the culture was reset, and customer complaints were replaced by letters of praise. He had saved his company by proving that true power isn't about a uniform or a title. It's about integrity. The story of Elijah Davies and Captain Miller is a powerful real-life reminder that arrogance and prejudice have a cost. Karma isn't just a concept. It's the bill that eventually comes due. On Flight 715, that bill was delivered at 35,000 Freddy. A pilot who thought he was a king above everyone learned the hard way that the man he mocked in a hoodie was in fact the kingdom's owner. It's a lesson in humility, a story of justice, and a reminder that true authority comes from respect, not a uniform. What did you think of Captain Miller's hard karma? Was it deserved? What would you have done in Elijah's shoes? Let me know your thoughts in the comments below. Your stories and opinions fuel this channel. If you enjoyed this story of drama and justice, please hit that like button, share it with someone who needs to see karma in action, and be sure to subscribe and turn on all notifications. We have new stories of real-life drama and twists every week.